I was halfway through chewing a piece of overcooked duck when her mother called me a pobra idiota, a pathetic idiot. Her father snorted. Her sister actually choked on her wine from laughing. And Camila, my girlfriend of almost 2 years, didn't even flinch. She smiled, wiped the corner of her mouth with her napkin like she hadn't just translated their insults into chuckles. Let me be clear, I wasn't supposed to understand. That's the punchline. They thought I was just sitting there, dumb and wide-eyed, like a rescue dog thrilled to be fed scraps from the fancy table. They thought I couldn't tell they were slaughtering me in Spanish all night. Because according to Camila, I'm just a mechanic from the Midwest. In their world, that apparently makes me both expendable and illiterate. Let me back up, just a little. 2 weeks before this dinner, Camila begged me to meet her parents. I had avoided it for months, mostly because she made them sound like royalty. Rich, elitist, impossible to impress. She said it was important for the future, said they were finally open to meeting someone not from the circle. Spoiler, they weren't. I showed up with wine, a pressed shirt, and every polite bone in my awkward, nervous body engaged at full capacity. I complimented their home. I complimented the food. I even complimented the horrible painting in their hallway that looked like a haunted goose mid-heart attack. They smiled through their teeth. Camila rubbed my knee under the table like I was a good boy behaving well in public. And then the Spanish whispers began. It started slow. Her mother commented on how I held my fork. Muy primitivo, she said. Her dad whispered. He looks like he's trying to impress a parole board. Her sister? She was brutal. Do you think he's even been on a plane? Camila laughed. She encouraged it. She nodded like it was all harmless fun. But I sat there, still smiling, and soaked in every word. Because what Camila never knew, what none of them ever bothered to ask, is that my grandmother is from Seville. I don't speak Spanish perfectly, but I understand it. Fluently. I've just never been the guy who needs to prove anything, especially not to people who've already decided I'm furniture. For an hour, I listened. Every insult, every dig, every snide remark about my job, my hands, my posture, my empty eyes. Her father literally asked if I had any intellectual hobbies or just beer and meat. Camila didn't defend me once. In fact, she said, he's sweet, simple, harmless, like a Labrador, doesn't need to understand. That's why I keep him. That's why I keep him. As if I were a convenience. A pet. A placeholder until her real life came back from grad school in France or wherever people like her vacation to escape their poor taste in boyfriends. But the best part? What really sealed the whole thing? Her dad raised his glass and said in Spanish, "Here's to family. May she never settle." They all laughed, including Camila. So I took a breath, set down my fork, wiped my mouth, and in calm, flawless Spanish, I said, "Thank you for the lovely meal. And thank you for confirming that I've been dating a performance, not a person." Dead silence. Her mom's face drained white. Her dad coughed mid-sip. Her sister looked like someone had tasered her under the table. And Camila? She sat there frozen, fork in hand, mouth slightly open, as if the duck suddenly tasted like betrayal. But trust me, that was just the opening act. Because what I did next, let's just say, I didn't leave quietly. The silence after I spoke was thick enough to choke on. I could hear the distant hum of the air conditioning and the faint scrape of her mother's fork against porcelain. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. It was like I'd ripped the tablecloth off and revealed everyone's dirty little secrets underneath. Camila's eyes were locked on mine, like she wasn't sure if I'd just threatened to burn the house down or proposed marriage in the wrong language. I stood up slowly, adjusted the collar of the shirt I bought just for this occasion, a shirt that now felt like clown makeup, and slid my chair back with the kind of quiet finality you save for funerals. "I'll show myself out," I added, in English this time, because the performance was over and I was no longer playing the dumb boyfriend role. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I walked out with the calm of someone who had nothing left to lose, and for the first 5 seconds after stepping into the night air, I felt liberated. But then I got into my truck, shut the door, and that's when the weight hit me, like a wall. I didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, listening to my own heartbeat, stunned by how quickly someone I loved had turned me into a joke. Then my phone buzzed. "Camila, text message. You could have told me you spoke Spanish. That was childish." Childish. Not hurtful, not apologetic, not "I'm sorry you had to hear that." No, childish. Like I had embarrassed her. Like I had crossed a line by not disclosing a language skill, instead of her turning an entire dinner into a roast session at my expense. I didn't reply. I started the engine, drove around aimlessly, ended up at an all-night diner 2 towns over where nobody knew my name. Nobody asked why I looked like I'd just survived a breakup and a bombing at the same time. I sat at the counter and ate cold pie while my phone lit up with more messages. It wasn't that serious. My parents just have high standards. You knew that. Why are you acting like you've been betrayed or something? That one made me laugh. Acting? No, sweetheart. This wasn't acting. This was me realizing, in real time, that the woman I thought I might propose to someday had been putting on a mask this entire relationship, and that underneath it, she didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a lesser, an accessory, a temporary emotional support appliance. At around 1:30 a.m., I drove back to my place. The apartment felt different, smaller somehow. I took off the stupid shirt and tossed it into the trash. Sat on the edge of my bed for an hour staring at the floor. I didn't know if I should block her, confront her again, or pretend the whole night never happened. That's how messed up it had me. This unbearable mix of humiliation, heartbreak, and self-doubt. I finally fell asleep sometime before dawn. And when I woke up, she was in my kitchen, just standing there, in one of my hoodies, making coffee, like nothing happened. She looked over her shoulder and smiled like we were still in some rom-com where arguments get solved over eggs and toast. "Morning," she said. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her, stunned, like she was some ghost from a version of my life that didn't exist anymore. But what she said next, that's when I knew the rabbit hole went way deeper than I thought. Because she didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just sighed and said, "Look, I didn't tell them about the engagement because I knew they'd react badly. But now you've basically guaranteed they'll never accept you." Engagement. I blinked. What engagement? Camila's expression changed. Just slightly. Just enough for me to know. I wasn't supposed to know about that. She tried to backpedal, but it was too late. My blood ran cold. Because suddenly, I realized something was seriously wrong. This wasn't just a humiliating dinner anymore. This was a cover story. And whatever she'd told her parents, and maybe even someone else, I was not a part of it. I stared at her, barely breathing, trying to piece together what I'd just heard. What engagement? I repeated, quieter this time. Not angry, not accusatory, just stunned. Like my mouth said the words while my brain was still trying to load the context. Camila hesitated. Just a flicker. Her hand trembled as she reached for her coffee. And for a second, I thought she might lie, spin something clever, smooth, the way she always did when she sensed I was getting too close to seeing her raw. But instead, she rolled her eyes. Not guiltily, not sheepishly, dismissively, like I was being dramatic again. "I was going to talk to you about it," she said, taking a sip. "I didn't expect you to hear it like that." Hear what exactly? That she told her family we were engaged? That she had plans for us I didn't even know about? Or that this entire time she'd been stringing me along while building a version of our relationship that didn't match reality? One where I was more like a tolerated phase than an actual person with thoughts and expectations? She moved around my kitchen like she belonged there. Like her betrayal hadn't just fractured the floor under my feet. She pulled bread from my pantry, butter from my fridge. My brain was still spinning from her comment, and she was making toast. "You lied to them," I finally said. "You told them we were engaged?" She shrugged, back still to me. "It's complicated. They wouldn't have accepted you unless they thought it was serious." "It wasn't serious?" She spun around, offended by my tone. "Of course it was. Don't twist my words. I just had to frame it a certain way for them to understand. You wouldn't get it, Merritt. It's a cultural thing." There it was again, the subtle jab. "You wouldn't get it." The same line she used when she thought I didn't understand the wine list, or when I asked why her friends all spoke in Spanish around me even though they were fluent in English. She used culture as a shield, not as something sacred, but as a barrier. A wall she could hide behind whenever she didn't want to be questioned. But now that wall had cracks, and something was seeping through. "So you lied about us being engaged, just to make your parents take me seriously?" I asked. "What was the plan, Camila? Keep lying forever? Stage a fake proposal at some point? Hope I'd just go along with it?" She didn't answer immediately. She looked down at the butter knife in her hand like it held the response she needed. "I just didn't want to lose both worlds," she finally whispered. I blinked. "Both?" She stiffened. Didn't say another word. I stepped closer. Camila, who else thinks you're engaged? Silence. And then, a phone buzzed on the counter. Hers. Face up. The name on the screen was saved as A. It rang once. Then again. Then again. She didn't move to answer. Her entire body had gone still. I reached for it, slowly. She didn't stop me. And just as my thumb hovered over the green bubble, the message preview lit up. We still on for Chicago? Can't wait to finally see you again. Fiancé ring. I didn't feel the anger right away. I felt nothing. A hollow, low hum of disbelief vibrated through my spine. Chicago? Again? Fiancé? I set the phone down gently. Like a bomb. Camila didn't cry. Didn't beg. She just whispered, "It's not what you think." But she was wrong. Because what I thought, and what I knew, was that I wasn't just some underdog boyfriend mocked by her family at a dinner table. I was the backup plan. The convenient version of love she could fall into when her real life didn't work out. And now, suddenly, that real life was knocking, with plane tickets and engagement emojis. You lied to them, I said. You lied to me. You're lying to someone else. And now you're standing here, in my home, making toast, like none of it matters. Camila looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, mouth trembling. She opened it like she was about to say something. Maybe to explain, maybe to confess, maybe to twist things into a guilt trip I'd fall for. But before she could speak, I said quietly, "Get out." And this time, I didn't have to say it in Spanish for her to understand. Camila didn't leave right away. She stood there, like some misplaced statue in my kitchen, staring at the floor as if gravity might swallow her whole if she moved. I didn't scream. I didn't push. I didn't throw her phone at the wall, though the urge was there, deep in the gut, like a tide pressing against a dam. I just watched. Cold. Detached. Like I was suddenly observing a stranger through a pane of thick glass. Eventually, she left. No suitcase. No explanation. Just walked out with the hoodie she had no right to be wearing anymore, clutching her phone like it was the only lifeline she had left. I stood in that silence for a long time. The toast had burned in the toaster. Smoke curled lazily toward the ceiling, and I didn't move to stop it. I let it rise. Let the room choke a little. It felt right. A fitting funeral pyre for whatever version of love I thought I'd been living in. Later that night, when the silence became unbearable and my mind refused to stop rewinding every red flag I'd ignored, I did something I hadn't done since high school. I hacked a phone. Okay, not exactly hacked. But Camila had used my Wi-Fi for months. She once logged into WhatsApp web on my laptop while hers was charging, and apparently forgot to log out. Most people clear their digital footprints. Camila, in all her brilliance and arrogance, did not. And now, her secret inbox was open in front of me like a confession she hadn't planned to make. I scrolled, and the first thing I noticed? There were no romantic messages between us in the last 2 months. Nothing cute. No saved photos. Not even the random, "How's your day?" she used to send. That part of our relationship had gone dead quietly, like a room no one noticed had gone cold. But with A? Oh, it was alive. Electric. Intimate. Counting the days until I can see your face again. Don't worry about him, he's nobody. My family doesn't even consider it real. You're the only person who makes me feel understood. I still have your ring. Don't you dare propose before I come back to Chicago. That last one hit me like a steel bat to the spine. Not, don't you dare get engaged. No, don't you dare propose to someone else. Because apparently, Camila had not only lied to her family and to me, but to him, too. Told him she was just helping out a struggling friend. That I needed emotional support after a breakup. That I was living with her temporarily while I got back on my feet. The reality? She'd been living in my apartment, on my dime, while pretending to him that I was some fragile lost cause she was saving out of pity. And this A? His name was Augustine, Colombian-American, UX designer in Chicago, tall, wealthy, vegan, according to one of her messages complaining about my love for bacon. His Instagram, which I stalked through her saved links, looked like an Apple ad exploded into a lifestyle catalog. Clean kitchens, smooth jawlines, wrist tattoos, and handwritten playlists. I hated him, not because he was better than me, but because he thought she loved him, too. And maybe she did. That was the part that hollowed me out the most. Not the lies, not the manipulation, but the fact that I was never the center of the betrayal. Just a convenient background prop in someone else's romance. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about messaging him, sending screenshots, dropping the entire transcript in his inbox. But I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't thinking clearly. I needed a plan, not revenge. So I took a deep breath, opened a fresh notebook, and started writing everything down. Every date, every message, every inconsistency. I was going to untangle every thread of her twisted little double life. But first, I had to make a call. Because what Augustine didn't know, and what Camila had clearly never told him, was that she and I had a joint bank account, set up 2 months ago, when she convinced me it would make splitting rent easier. That account, it had $4,600 in it. And by the time I finished my call, it had $0. 0. She took the money. She took my time, my home, my trust, and now, she took my damn savings. So yeah, I was done playing the dumb boyfriend. I was about to become something else entirely. Sleep wasn't even an option that night. I sat on the floor beside my bed, eyes dry, mind racing, trying to process the full scope of what had just happened. You think you'll recognize betrayal when it hits you. You imagine some big dramatic moment. Tears, screaming, something shattering. But in real life, betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes, it just quietly extracts everything you are and walks out with it, like it owns the place. And Camila? She didn't just leave with my trust. She looted me. It took 5 calls to the bank to confirm what I already knew. The funds from our joint account had been transferred at 3:14 a.m. to an external account under her name. Not split, not negotiated, not warned. Just gone, clean as a surgical cut. The same account we created at her suggestion when we were building something real together. The one she offered to manage because you don't like dealing with apps and paperwork, Merritt. No, I didn't. I liked dealing with people who didn't screw me while I slept. And I wasn't even mad yet. Not really. Not in the fire-breathing, punch-the-wall way people expect. I was in that deeper place. That quiet, cold place where you don't want revenge, you want clarity. You want to flip every stone, pull every thread, expose the entire illusion, not just for the world, but for yourself. Because the worst part isn't what she did. It's how long I ignored the signs. The wine I never touched, but she bought weekly. The work trips that never showed up on her calendar. The one drawer in the apartment she always kept locked. And suddenly, every little laugh she gave while texting, every Spanish phrase I pretended not to understand, every long shower with music on. It all felt like puzzle pieces I had thrown away because I didn't want to believe they meant anything. But now I did. I sat at my laptop and typed one sentence into a new Word doc. She played me like a second life. And then, like I was writing a police report, I began cataloging everything. That was the night I decided this story wasn't going to stay a secret. She took my privacy, so I was going to take her fiction and turn it into fact. I was going to be loud, honest, ugly even, because I had nothing left to protect. By noon the next day, I had posted the entire outline of my story anonymously on a private subreddit I knew Augustine followed. Yes, I confirmed it. Through a public post he made 6 months ago about his mysterious Spanish girlfriend who traveled for work a lot and wasn't ready to post their relationship publicly yet. He'd even shared a blurry photo from behind. Long black hair, orange coat, Valencia Street. It was her, no doubt. So I posted the facts, the dates, the quotes, the screenshots, carefully redacted to avoid doxing. And I left it with a message. If your name starts with A, and you're dating a Spanish textile designer who tells you she's caught between 2 worlds, you're not the world she's torn about. You're the one being used. Just like I was. I didn't expect anything. Maybe some sympathy, maybe some trolls. But what I got, that changed everything. Because he messaged me. Directly. It started with one word. How long? I stared at it for 10 full minutes before replying. Almost 2 years. She said you were her cousin's ex. She said you moved in after a bad breakup and had no one else. She said you were harmless. That one broke me. I didn't know what hurt more, that she painted me as some wounded puppy dragging my feet through her life, or that someone else believed it. And then he said something I didn't expect. She told me she was pregnant. Everything stopped. I reread the message 4 times. My hands went ice cold. I almost threw up. Not because I believed her, but because now the game had changed. This wasn't just a web of lies. This was a ticking bomb. One that was going to explode in someone's face. And I wasn't sure yet if that someone was me. I sat at the edge of my bed, phone in hand, heart galloping like I'd just run through a burning building barefoot. Pregnant. That word had sunk into the pit of my stomach like a weight that would never come back up. The screen still glowed in the dark with Augustine's message, like it was daring me to blink and pretend I didn't read it right. She told me she was pregnant. And just like that, everything I thought I understood about Camila cracked open again, like peeling wallpaper to find mold beneath. Because she hadn't said a word to me. No signs. No mentions. Not even the faintest suggestion. And yet, here was this man, her other life, telling me she had weaponized motherhood to tighten the leash around his neck. It made my skin crawl. I typed back slowly, carefully. She never told me. Ever. When did she say that to you? He responded almost immediately. 3 weeks ago, when I pressed her about the distance. She said she couldn't tell anyone yet. Said she was scared you'd do something crazy if you found out. There it was again, this twisted version of me she'd been feeding him. The sad, unstable roommate. The emotional stray dog she kept around out of mercy. She'd painted me as someone so pathetic that even he had kept his distance, thinking he was doing the noble thing by not asking too many questions. But this pregnancy lie was a different kind of cruelty. Not just betrayal, manipulation at the biological level. Playing two people against each other with the ultimate human currency. And maybe it was fake. Maybe it wasn't. But I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. Because if there was even a chance, then I was at the center of something way bigger than heartbreak. I needed proof. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept flashing back to little things. A morning she'd stayed in bed longer than usual. A time she turned down wine at a friend's dinner. The way she once touched her stomach absently while brushing her teeth. Had that meant anything? Or was I just retrofitting memories to fit the paranoia? By morning, I had a plan. Camila didn't answer my calls, of course. But she didn't block me either. That told me something. She wasn't done with whatever game this was. Not yet. So I baited her. We need to talk. I know about Chicago. And the baby. It took her 13 minutes to respond. You misunderstood everything. Please don't make a mess. I'll explain. Meet me at the park near 5th and Willow at 3 p.m. Public. Safe. No drama. No drama. That was rich, coming from someone who had created a soap opera dense enough to run for 5 seasons. At 2:50, I was already parked 2 blocks away. I didn't want to be seen walking up. I wanted to watch her arrive, see her body language, her posture, the speed of her steps. I wanted to read her like she'd read me all those months when I had no idea what was really going on. And sure enough, at 2:57, she appeared. Same leather jacket. Same quiet elegance. But her walk? Slower. Controlled. She scanned the park like she was afraid someone else might show up. Maybe Augustine. Maybe a ghost. Maybe the consequences she finally knew were coming. I walked up from behind, deliberately. Her shoulders flinched when I said her name. Merritt, she said, almost like a question. You look tired. I've been busy digging through lies. She had the nerve to look hurt. Like she was the one being cornered. Like I'd somehow violated her boundaries by finally standing in front of the truth. I can explain, she said quickly. You need to hear the whole story before you burn it down. I'm not here to burn anything, I said flatly. I'm here to figure out if I should be booking a paternity test or a therapy session. She froze, just for a beat. Then she looked away and smiled. Not a happy smile. A hollow, defensive one. The kind you wear when your back is against the wall and you're still hoping charm can save you from facts. There's no baby, she said. Just like that. No hesitation. I made it up. The world tilted for a second. Why? I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. Why would you why that? She looked down at her hands like they were telling her what to say. I needed him to stay. He was getting distant. And I panicked. I knew he'd fall apart if he thought I needed him. And me? I asked. What was I? Her eyes met mine again. No more performance now. Just exhaustion. You were the safe place I didn't want to admit I'd already destroyed. I nodded. Once. Slowly. And then I walked away. Not because I forgave her. Not because I was done. But because in that moment, I realized I had the truth, and she had nothing left to weaponize. 3 days passed before I heard from Augustine again. I half expected him to go silent, disappear into his own version of the fallout, and pretend it never happened. Some people do that. They bury betrayal like it's a crime they helped commit. But not him. At 2:17 p.m. on a Wednesday, I got a call. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mostly because part of me hoped it was him. And it was. He didn't say hello. Didn't ask if it was a good time. He just started talking, like we were picking up a conversation that had been unfolding in both of our heads separately, waiting for someone to say it out loud. "Do you know how long she was flying out to see me?" he asked. I didn't. "She told me she was traveling to trade expos," he continued, "or visiting her mother. She always had a reason. Sometimes she'd come for just a weekend, leave on Monday like a ghost. I thought it was spontaneous, passionate. I thought it meant she cared." There was a pause, heavy and human, like he was catching his breath without realizing he needed to. I looked back through my photos, through my calendar. She visited 9 times. 9 flights. 9 lies. I didn't know what to say, so I just let him keep going. "I wanted to hate you," he admitted. "At first. You were the guy she talked about like a lost cause. I pictured someone broken, needy, clinging to her while she was trying to live free. But when I saw that post you made, and when you sent me the screenshots," he trailed off. "I realized," he said finally, "I was the other man the whole time. And I didn't even know." That sentence, that one, hit me like a gut punch. Because I hadn't thought of it that way. I had been so consumed by my own humiliation, by the image of being mocked in another language and drained of my savings, that I hadn't fully grasped the mirror she'd held up to both of us. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't even the main act. I was just one side of a triangle that she'd drawn in pencil, so she could erase whichever corner became inconvenient. Augustine cleared his throat. "I want to meet," he said. "Talk face to face." I agreed. We met in a neutral place, a diner halfway between our cities. It was the kind of spot where nobody would recognize us. Nobody would care why 2 grown men looked like they were meeting to divide a body, or maybe bury a dream. He was taller than I expected, clean-cut, soft-spoken, the kind of guy who probably listened when people talked and remembered their favorite books. We didn't shake hands. We just sat. For a long time, we didn't speak. We just drank bad coffee and stared at the condensation on the windows. It was weirdly comforting, like sitting with someone at a funeral who knew the deceased just as well as you did, but in a different light. When we finally did talk, it was raw, honest. "She made me feel like a priority," he said, "like I was the only one who got her. But now I look back, and every conversation had edges. She was always trying to steer things. Guide how I saw you. Guide how I saw her. She told me she lied about the pregnancy," I said. "Said she made it up to keep you close." Augustine nodded. No surprise in his face. Just resignation. Like that was the final weight on the coffin. "I've been with difficult women before," he said. "But never one who used love as a weapon. Camila didn't just lie. She crafted a version of reality and fed it to both of us like we were starving." We were quiet again. And then he said something I'll never forget. "I'm not interested in revenge," he told me. "I don't want to humiliate her, or post her name, or blow up her life. I just want to stop being a chapter in her story." That struck something in me. Because up until that point, I thought I did want revenge. I thought I wanted her to suffer, to see her house of cards collapse publicly, painfully. But now, sitting across from the only other person who could understand the full scope of what she'd done, I realized what I actually wanted was closure. I didn't want to scream at her. I wanted to never think about her again. We came up with a plan, not to punish, but to exit. For real this time. Clean. No flaming letters. No exposed texts. Just silence. Absolute silence. He blocked her. I did too. I shut down the joint account officially, reported the transfer, filed fraud paperwork, canceled every auto payment, changed the locks. He forwarded me her last message, one she'd sent before she confessed to me in the park. "I'm going to tell him. I swear. I just need a little more time. You're the one I want. He means nothing." No name. No context. She could have sent it to either of us. Or someone else entirely. And that was the final twist. It didn't matter who she'd meant it for. Because we were both done being meaninglessly someone. 3 weeks passed. That's how long it took for the weight in my chest to loosen. Not vanish, just loosen. Like a knot I'd been carrying for months had finally started to uncoil. I still had the occasional moment. Those random flashes of her laugh, her perfume on old clothes, the outline of her name in the dust where a framed photo used to sit. But there was something else, too, stillness. A kind I hadn't felt in a long time. No more split attention. No more wondering if I was the joke in a room I didn't understand. No more games. I had gone no contact. Fully. I even replaced my number. I deleted old texts. Block mutuals. I had made the decision, not just to remove her from my life, but to reclaim the parts of me that had been molded to accommodate someone else's deception. And something unexpected happened. I started sleeping better. Not immediately, but gradually. My dreams became quieter. My mornings less tight. I started walking again. Real walks, without headphones, without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I picked up an old hobby I dropped years ago, woodworking. I built a bookshelf. Nothing fancy, just 4 shelves and a smooth finish. But I finished it. And I kept it. Not to show off. Just to remind myself that I could still create something honest with my own hands. One afternoon, I got a text from Augustine. Just a photo. A slice of deep dish pizza and a cold beer. No caption. I sent one back. My new bookshelf with a mug of coffee on top. That was the extent of it. We never tried to stay friends, but we never needed to. There was something sacred in the fact that we'd both survived the same fire, and neither of us wanted to live near smoke ever again. And Camila? She didn't reach out. Not once. At first, I thought the silence would kill me. But eventually, I realized it was the greatest gift she'd ever given me, because it meant she wasn't trying to rewrite the narrative. She had moved on, or maybe she'd finally run out of stories to tell. Then, on a Tuesday in early fall, something strange showed up in my mailbox. It was a small envelope. No return address. Inside, a photograph. One I didn't recognize. It was a candid, me, sitting at the dinner table at her parents' house, months ago. I looked awkward, shoulders slightly hunched, smiling nervously. Camila was leaning toward me, mid-laugh. On the back of the photo, in small handwriting, were 5 words. I was wrong about you. No name. No explanation. I didn't need one. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it in the drawer of the bookshelf I built. Not out of sentiment, but closure. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I didn't even feel the need to respond, if it ever had come from her. Because the truth was, I wasn't the man in that picture anymore. I was no longer someone waiting to be chosen. I was no longer someone defined by the way someone else saw me. I had stopped being a prop in someone else's story and started writing my own. And in the strangest, most poetic twist of all, I finally liked the sound of my own silence.